Welcome to part 2 of the Airgun Ballistics 101 series. We're looking at types of airguns today, and when I say types, I don't just mean different brands. Airguns come in all kinds of different shapes and sizes, but it's the way in which the pellet is propelled that really determines the way a gun is going to perform. So in this video, I'm going to give you a brief rundown of all the major different kinds of airguns. We'll look at how each of them work, and then we'll look at the various strengths and weaknesses, advantages and disadvantages of each. So the first basic kind of airgun we're going to look at is probably the most popular kind, the Springer. Most people start off with a Springer. I know I certainly did, and there's a reason why they're so popular. They are, for the most part, very affordable. Springers are cocked using a long lever which compresses a very strong spring within the body of the rifle itself. When the trigger is pulled, the spring drives a piston forward, forcing air through the barrel and sending the pellet flying. It's a fairly straightforward design and requires no extra parts like full tanks or pumps. Sounds pretty good, right? So what are the drawbacks or weaknesses of spring rifles? Well, there's a common misconception that spring guns are inaccurate just because they're spring guns. That is absolutely not the case. If you take a rifle like the Varrock HW97 or the Air Arms TX200, which are both top-end springers, you see a high-quality barrel, a piston that delivers incredible consistency, and a durable build quality. If you had to put one of these guns in a vise, you would see tight groups being shot. However, spring guns do have one really big weakness, and that weakness is in the harmonics. We'll get to harmonics later on in the series, but in a nutshell, a Springer will have absolutely no consistency unless it is held exactly the same way every single time it's fired. So do other kinds of airguns also have a degree of hold sensitivity? Absolutely, but the amplitude of the shockwave that travels through a Springer when it is fired is much greater than on any other kind of airgun. The violence of the recoil means that any inconsistency with the shooter's hold will result in the bore axis being thrown off. This basically means that you can't expect to be able to zero your gun off a bench and then take a standing shot and still hit your mark. And this can be extremely frustrating if you're constantly shooting from different positions. And it's for this reason that you won't often see me with a Springer. I just eventually got tired of the hold sensitivity and decided it was time for a change. The next type of airgun we're going to look at is the pump pneumatic gun. These little guys are a lot of fun to play with, but they don't have much power and can also take a while to pump between each shot. A pump pneumatic features a small air reservoir that is pressurized by manually pumping the gun. When you take a shot, all the air is released from the reservoir and you have to pump again for the next shot. These guns are not as violent to shoot as the Springers, and they can potentially be fairly accurate, but they aren't really suited to anything other than plinking and perhaps shooting small pests within 20 yards. Moving on, we've got the CO2 gun. These guns use compressed carbon dioxide as a power source, and because carbon dioxide has such a low boiling point, it can be stored as a liquid. This means that a typical CO2 gun will give you quite a decent shot count. Unfortunately, this comes at a high cost. Carbon dioxide is extremely volatile and will give you terrible consistency, especially when the gun is fired rapidly. That basically rules the CO2 guns out if you're serious about accuracy or long-range performance. But if you're looking for a fun little pistol or carbine to plink around with, these might be a very good option. And I've saved the best for last, the pre-charged pneumatic or PCP. I discovered these about 6 or 7 years ago, and there's been no looking back. They are just so versatile, so powerful, and so ridiculously accurate that they open up a whole new world of opportunities. Granted, they can also be very, very expensive, but if you're willing to save a little bit, you'll find that you're able to do things that were never possible with any of the other kinds of rifles. As the name suggests, PCPs work on compressed air and feature air cylinders that are usually filled somewhere between 100 and 250 bar from a hand pump or more commonly a scuba tank. When the trigger is pulled, a hammer strikes a valve and a small amount of air is released. This puff of air can be regulated in a number of ways, mechanically or electronically. And the easy effort required to cock a hammer on a PCP opens up a door for a multi-shot option, and that's why many PCPs come with magazines. Some of them are even semi-automatic, so times are definitely changing. Air is a lot less volatile and less temperature sensitive than CO2, so you can achieve incredible consistency from a PCP. Add to that the fact that there's almost no recoil, and suddenly you have a platform that is able to send a pellet towards a target with incredible precision. For that reason, we're going to be looking at PCPs as examples for all the upcoming videos in the series. Put simply, they are clearly the number one choice for precision shooters and long-range marksmen. There's no doubt about that. So before we bring this to a close, let's recap quickly. We've got the springers, the pump pneumatics, the CO2s, and the PCPs. Here's a table of all of their advantages and disadvantages. You'll want to pause the video here, maybe take some notes, because perhaps this will help you to make a decision on your next purchase. In the next episode, we'll be turning all our attention towards PCPs. We'll be looking in great detail at parts like valves, hammers, transfer ports, and pressure regulators, and we'll chat about why it's so important that these parts are balanced perfectly. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you then.